NFL Draft Middle Linebacker Rankings live on Google Hangouts. Thank you guys so much for the 500 views for our MLS draft coverage on Friday. But we're going to focus on the middle linebacker rankings, the Mike linebackers. There's a lot of good ones in this class, but I think the headline player that really stands out is Georgia's Roquan Smith. I know he's 6'1", 225, but he plays like someone who's 6'4", 240. You have to overlook his size. Stops back into coverage, stops the run like an all-pro. He had 85 solo tackles, 52 assisted tackles, 137 total tackles, 14 tackles for a loss, 10 quarterback hurries, 6.5 sacks. The stat sheet says Roquan didn't have any college football playoff. That is BS. The tape shows Smith getting 2 hurries during both of those playoff games, which would put him at 10 quarterback hurries. What?
The site has your document in it. I don't know what happened with your document, but I've got it after several minutes.
What I did is I uploaded the document. I copied and pasted all the code I had from my brackets document and pasted that to the blank document. That's what made all the data show up, Joey.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah, thanks for the info. So I had that. It's like if I didn't have that data, we'd be screwed, but thank God I backed up that data. So Roquan Smith, let's get to his strengths. He uses rip and swim moves. He's excellent at getting quarterback hurries. He knows how to stop the run. He will powerbomb an opposing running back. You see what he did in the powerbombed the Rodney Anderson, the Oklahoma running back. He powerbombed some of Alabama's running backs. He excels at dropping into coverage. He's a tackling machine, a 3-down linebacker. He can play inside in the 34 or the 43. Excellent communicator, high football IQ, commands triple teams. He can still get by the interior offensive line on tape. The only weakness I see on tape might be the size at 6'1", 225. I think Smith has too much talent on tape, though, and if you exclude that size, this might be the most complete linebacker I've ever seen coming out of college. And I have the Colts and the Bears as the 2 teams in the top 10. The Raiders at 10 could be another option, but I don't think Roquan's going to follow the Raiders. I don't see any threats with Roquan Smith. I have a 97 grade on Roquan. That's the highest grade I've gave a middle linebacker outside of Luke Kuechly. I had Patrick Willis at 95 coming out of Ole Miss, Reuben Foster at 94, Rolando McClain at 93. And Miles Jack has proved me wrong, so I didn't think Miles Jack would be all that, but I knew a lot of people really liked Miles Jack, so Roquan Smith really did well in 2016, so he's a player that can be a riser. And we talked about Roquan Smith during the college football playoff special we did on Facebook Live, where my phone nearly died, but we got through the entire game, and it was something else. Roquan was making plays all over the field. So honestly, if the Giants took this guy at 2 or the Colts took this guy at 3, I'd probably give them an A grade, maybe even an A+. I mean, I think Roquan's got a chance to be a really special player in this league.
Yeah, and Roquan, he was the best player on the field in that Oklahoma game. A top 5 prospect at this point. The 52 solo tackles, I almost feel...
Those were assisted tackles. He had 85 solo tackles.
Yeah, because he always seems to be all over the field. He's great at the point of attack. He can get into the line of scrimmage. He can find the ball almost anywhere he goes. I think at this point, he completely dominated the line of scrimmage. And when Oklahoma's offense started to break down, they started to break down when Roquan Smith started screening, eyeing, spying, whatever you want to call it. And that really showed that Smith could cover. And he was strong in coverage. So Smith is probably the first middle linebacker in many years that I can say is a legitimate top five prospect at this point.
Yep. And the other linebacker I have a top 10 grade on too. And I'll remind you of what class this reminds me of after I get through my Tremaine Edmonds segment. But Tremaine Edmonds, He's 6'5", 250. He had 60 solo tackles, 49 assisted, 109 tackles, 14 tackles for a loss, and 5.5 sacks. He showed more versatility, and he's bigger than Roquan Smith. And that's why some scouts have him ahead of Roquan. He can rush the QB. He has a relentless work ethic, 3-down linebacker, burst off the edge. He's projected to run a 4.5 flat at the NFL Combine this year. Unlike Roquan Smith, despite his size, Edmonds is not someone who's going to use his hands to win blocks. He is complete in every other category and arguably more versatile, plus he's bigger, but he does not win blocks as consistently as Roquan Smith does. I think would be a great fit for Roquan Smith. I don't think there's any threats with him. I don't think he's as sound from intangibles or technique standpoint, but he does have great intangibles, but I think his technique isn't quite as good as Roquan Smith, but 6th grade. And honestly, these are the 2 highest linebackers I have ever graded outside of Luke Kuechly. And this draft with Tremaine Edmonds and Roquan Smith, it kind of reminds me of the 2000 draft when you had LeVar Arrington go 2nd overall and you had Brian Urlacher go 9th overall. So that is the vibe I am getting with this middle linebacker class with Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds. I think both could go in the top 10. So I'm really high on both of these linebackers. Maybe I'm overselling them to a degree, but I really do like both of these linebackers a lot. Have you seen Edmonds? What are your thoughts on him, Joey?
Yeah, I like Evans. I believe he's a little bit more of an athlete than Roquan is, and I really think he's probably more versatile than Roquan is. But also, I don't think he has the raw presence Roquan Smith has.
I don't either.
But yeah, the presence of Smith is just something that very few people have. Maybe you could fill me with a name because I can't quite remember the name. It was from a while ago. Smith reminds me of the old Bengals middle linebacker. Just big, sturdy guy, great leader, makes a difference all over the field. Where Tremaine Edmonds just doesn't, he doesn't have that type of presence. But I think he can also be a star. He just doesn't, and he can be more versatile. I think he can play in the 43-34 from the outside as well. I just don't think he has the presence or the leadership at this point that Roquan Smith has.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And the old Bengals linebacker, I think he was in the movie. He was in BMS: The Rise of Thadland. He was an old Bengals linebacker. I think I know who you're thinking of, but you know what? It really doesn't matter at this point. Let's just get to our number 3 linebacker, the Alabama linebacker, Rashaan Evans. We just mentioned Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech. And let's get to the Alabama linebacker. We're not going to torture Kerm and make him wait for an Alabama linebacker. We're not that cruel, Joey. So Rashaan Evans.
Yes, we are. Don't try to sugarcoat it.
For number 3, Rashaan Evans, middle linebacker, Alabama, 6'2", 234. Led Alabama to their 2nd national championship, 2017. The first time he was a backup. This time he's a starter. 74 total tackles, 13 tackles for a loss, 6 sacks, and he has that skill set as well. He can rush the quarterback, stop the run. He has a relentless work ethic. He can get past an opposing offensive line with fantastic grip and swim moves. Also does an awesome job with his burst off the edge. He drops back into coverage. His rip and swim moves are so good. He excels in coverage. The weakness is he's not a tackling machine like Roquan or Edmonds, but he does everything else fantastically on tape. You'd like to see him add more muscle, but it's not a deal breaker. Rashaan Evans out of Alabama was supposed to play in the Senior Bowl, but I've got conflicting reports that he withdrew from the Senior Bowl. So if you could look that up and confirm or validate that, Kerm, that would be fantastic. I've got a 91 grade on Evans, and I do have a first-round grade on Rashaan Evans. I think him and these other 2 linebackers are all first-rounders, but where they end up is the big question. So I'm not going to penalize Rashawn for withdrawing from the Senior Bowl. I still think he's a first-round talent. So he's got first-round tape. Like, this was the #1 linebacker in our rankings for such a long time, but Roquan's presence just really caught our eye down the stretch.
I'm looking it up.
Meanwhile, Kerm is looking up whether Rashaan Evans did remove himself from the Senior Bowl. What are your thoughts on Rashaan Evans, Joey?
I thought I already gave you my thoughts on Rashaan Evans.
Well, no, we talked Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech.
I gave it. That was my bad. But Evans he is athletic and disciplined. Those are the two things that really stand out when it comes to Rashaan Evans for me. Athletic, disciplined. He's a little underweight. I don't like the 234 pounds for an inside or middle line. He'd be better at 234 with the inside linebacker, but for a middle linebacker, he's a little light in the 4.3. He's very good against the run. I really like what he can do there. He was a slow developer in his pass rush, but he's done a pretty good job getting better there. But, as all Alabama linebackers do, he's pretty good in coverage. But, I really want to see him work on his pass rush moves to get better in that area. So, other than the pass rush moves, which will help him with his pass rush to be more versatile, which he needs at 234 pounds, that I don't see a lot wrong with him, but at the same time, I don't see him in that same top tier difference maker in this draft.
I think Edmonds and Roquan are both going to go in the top half of the draft. I think Rashaan Evans is going to go in the back half of the first round. That's just my personal opinion.
That linebacker I was thinking of was Brian Simmons. He was always a big, massive leader for that team besides Aikes in the late 90s. And he was a guy that I always really thought that he should have gotten more attention than he did. But playing beside Takeo Spike's always got all the attention. But the leader of that defense always played 137 games, started 118 of them, 748 sacks, 748 tackles, 24 sacks, 11 interceptions, and 8 fumbles recovered in a total of 9 years with the Bengals. So, that is a pretty nice stat line. Well, that was his whole career. 9 years with the Bengals. I think he had 9 years with the Bengals and a couple years with the Saints. 3 years with the Saints, I think. 2 or 3 years with Saints, whatever. But that is what Raekwon Smith kind of reminds me of, is that big guy that's going to get in there and put a hurting on you, a lot like Simmons did. And as you stated in that Oklahoma game, but he was also good in coverage, and Simmons was good in coverage. So that's the type of player that I see Raekwon Smith becoming.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
What's up?
Rashaan Evans is skipping the Senior Bowl because he wants to focus on the combine.
Which means he's probably going to weightlift more and try to get up to 240.
I don't know.
He's 234, so if he adds 6 pounds of muscle and keeps his speed intact, that's going to help him. So, something to keep an eye on. That's all I'm saying. Number 4 is a linebacker that Ryan thought was the best linebacker in the draft at the beginning of the year. A linebacker that probably is going to be a second-round pick. despite what some skeptics say about him, and that's Malik Jefferson out of Texas. 6'3", 240. He's versatile to play linebacker anywhere. 79 solo tackles, 31 assisted, 110 total tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, 5 QB hurries, 4 sacks in 2017. He's very versatile for a middle linebacker. He's a tackling machine, just like Roquan, just like Edmonds, possesses elite athleticism like Evans, great run stuffer, dominates in coverage. The weakness with him is lackluster instincts. He has the instincts of a 2-down linebacker instead of a 3-down linebacker. He either aims he needs to fix this from a technique standpoint, and that's the big issue with Malik Jefferson. Jeremiah pointed it out. Charlie Campbell pointed it out. These instincts are something he needs to fix, and if he can fix them, he'll sneak into the first round. But right now, he is raw from that standpoint. If you just look at the athleticism and everything he does on tape, yeah, he's a first rounder, but the tackling, the technique, that needs to be fixed in order for him to go in the first round. And I know Ryan's still going to have a first-round grade on him, and that's fine, but you've got to fix that from a technique standpoint. When they do the tackling drill where they have to tackle the dummies at the combine, I want to see Malik correct that and wrap up tackles better when we see him work out at the combine. He's a prospect who's got to fix his technique, but the strength and athleticism is there. I think he's a future starter. I gave him an 88 grade. So I think Malik Jefferson, there's a huge drop-off between the top 3 middle linebackers and Malik, and there's a significant top 2 linebackers in Evans. But then the drop-off gets even bigger after Evans with Malik at number 4. What are your thoughts on Malik? Do you think he's in that range, Joey? Because there are some people who really like his tape.
Yeah, I think he is, like many people in this draft, I think he's extremely athletic, extremely versatile, but I think at this point he is more athlete than football player. And that, for me, eliminates him from top 15 consideration because I don't like just athletes. Just athletes annoy me. He can be coached up, but I don't see top 15, top 16 in him for just an athlete. He's going to have to work his way and prove throughout the process that he is more than just.
I have a second on him right now, but he could sneak into the late first. He is just an athlete, like you said. And even Ryan moved him down from number 2 to number 22. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. I think 22 is his ceiling, and round 2 is his floor. We'll go with that since Ryan had him at number 22. Number 5 is a sleeper. A guy who a lot of people have ranked a lot lower, but this player impressed me on tape. That's Frank Ginda out of San Jose State. He's 6'0", 245. He can play linebacker everywhere. He had 94 solo tackles, 79 assisted, 173 total tackles, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries, 3 deflections. Ginda's versatile. He's a tackling machine. He has the instincts you want, has the run stuffing, dedicated in the weight room, supports his teammates, very mature. He's an excellent communicator. He needs to be more consistent with pass rushing and dropping into coverage. If you're just looking for a thumper, a 3-down thumper in the middle, Ginda's your man, but he needs to be more consistent with pass rushing, dropping into coverage. If he can fix that, he's going to be one of the most complete linebackers in this class. Right now, I have a second-round grade on him, but that can drop if he has a poor combine. He could drop to like day 3 in rounds 4 through 7 with a bad combine. But right now, based on his tape, I have a second-round grade on him. I have an 88 potential grade, and being 6'0" is really the only threat to him. There's not any threats with the other linebackers ahead of him. The threat with this guy is he's 6'0". That might limit his frame in the NFL. But what are your thoughts on Frank Ginda? Because I really like what I see with the tape.
I didn't get a chance to see a lot of Frank Ginda. I know that he was his claim was his run stuffing ability. I mean, he's kind of built in the mold of the Zach Miller from Miami Dolphins, or Zach Thomas, sorry, from Miami Dolphins. Small, compact, really good at getting lost in the sea of big men and getting to the tackler or getting to the running back, the ball, whatever. And that's where he gets most of his tackles. He gets lost, and when he sees the ball, he just hits it. So in order for him to be really successful, he's going to have to go to a team with a good front three or front four where he can kind of get lost a little bit. And when he sees those holes and he sees those through or whatever, he's where he can get in there and he can hit, he can stay low, and he can get them around and do a textbook tackle on them. But if he goes to a team like that, I think he can be very successful.
Yeah, exactly. And number 6 is another linebacker. That is a third-round prospect on my board, first third-rounder. So he got through the first 2 rounds of middle linebackers. Goody. Third-rounder is Josie Ewell out of Iowa. 6'2", 236. He's lined up at all 3 linebacker spots in the 43. He's a 43 only player, though. He's not a 34 player. He's played 34 in college his entire career. He's played the 34 in high school. He's not familiar with the terminology of the 34. And Josie Ewell, 69 solo tackles, 67 assisted tackles, 136 total tackles, 13.5 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks. He has great rip and swim moves. He's a tackling machine. He displays superb instincts. He knows how to wrap up running backs. He has the instincts. If you could get a player, if Malik Jefferson had Josie Ewell's instincts, he would be in the top 15. Let me just put it that way. He has everything you want. He really dominated versus Saquon early in that game. Great step and first step quickness, capable of dropping back into coverage, high football IQ, great leadership. He dominates in coverage. The weakness is he needs to add 5 pounds of muscle. Other than that, there's really no weaknesses because he's 6'2", 236. And besides adding maybe 5 pounds of muscle, this is one of the safer linebackers in this class. And he's a third-round prospect. He could be a first or second if he showed more upside. He's not really playing in the Collegiate Bowl, the East-West Shrine Game, or the Senior Bowl, so there's not going to be that window of opportunity for him to showcase his skills. He has 3 consecutive seasons of 124 total tackles. He's probably more consistent with tackling than any linebacker in this class. And Tony Mario compared him to former Buccaneers linebacker Barrett Rudd, which I actually really like that comparison. I don't see him. I don't think he's going to be as good as Chad Greenway, but I really like the Barrett Rudd comparison for Josie Ewell. I think it's very ideal and fits what he wants to do, and I gave him an 86 grade, but I think he's going to be an effective starter. I don't see him. He's going to be a Pro Bowl player, but I think he's going to be an effective starter wherever he goes. Because I really like what Jewell's done on tape, even though he's not going to have that game, whether it's the Shrine Game or the Senior Bowl or the Collegiate Bowl, where he's going to have the chance to jumpstart his draft stock. Have you seen Jewell out of Iowa?
I saw a little bit, not a whole lot. The Big Ten was kind of out of my reach a little more this year than it normally is. I remember seeing him a couple years ago.
Because, yeah, we talked about him for the 2017 draft, but he returned to school.
Yeah, he was a little bit younger, but I think that he didn't. He's a good tackler, a good pass rusher. He's solid. He's not spectacular in any way, but he knows what to do. He knows what he's doing, and he does it. And even if it's just to be a backup, teams always need a player like that because he's just one of those guys that's just a very solid player overall.
Yeah, exactly. Number 7 is FCS player, Nick DeLuca out of North Dakota State, who we will see in Mobile. He's 6'3", 245. He rebounded in 2017 by leading North Dakota State back to their first FCS championship since the Carson Wentz glory days. And he only had 74 total tackles, but he was dealing with a few injuries this year. He disappointed in North Dakota State's home opener. They barely won in overtime against Charleston Southern. And DeLuca is one of these players where Nick DeLuca has a chance to really move up the boards with a great Senior Bowl week. He had shoulder-ending surgery on 2016, but I think he's a top 20 middle linebacker if he can come back from that. And he has the play recognition to start. He's great at stopping the run. He has the size to be a 3-down linebacker. Sometimes he wraps up too low when making a tackle. The only season where he had over 100 tackles was 2015, so the instincts might be a little bit raw. When healthy, I see one of the most complete linebackers. I'm not sure where he's going to fall to, but I have a 3rd-round grade on him. And if he didn't have shoulder surgery, that would have kept him from 2016. But when healthy, this guy is one of the most complete middle linebackers, and he's a safe linebacker like Joe Cul, but the problem is he's not as durable as Joe Cul. Like Joel, but he might not reach that ceiling of being a safe, solid starter because of the durability issues. I have a 3rd on him. I could see why people have a day 3 grade on him, Joey.
Yeah, I will say I did not get to see DeLuca this year.
He'll be in Mobile tomorrow, though.
Yeah, he will. And that's the thing. I'm sure I'll hear a good bit about him. I've heard a little bit about him through the season, but not enough to really get a grip on him. So I will hear about him tomorrow. I'm sure I'll see some of the tape on him. So I look forward to it.
Yep, and another Senior Bowl linebacker, number 8, Micah Kaiser out of Virginia. He has Kiser, no relation to Deshaun Kaiser. 6'2", 240. He's a plug-and-play linebacker. He can play 43 middle linebacker or 34 middle linebacker. He had 50 solo tackles, 95 assisted tackles, and 145 total tackles. He can be a tackling machine. He's great at stopping the run coverage. He blanketed David Njoku on tape and coverage. But the big issue with him is he struggles to win blocks. He lacks the strength to get by offensive linemen when they place his hands on him. Because there was a point early in the season where I thought Micah Kaiser had the ceiling to be the number 1 linebacker in this class. And Robbins from Lombardi's Draft Talk pulled me aside and said, look, this guy's not winning blocks consistently on tape. You got to go back and readjust your boards. So that's what I did. I kept him in that 3rd-round range, and I think if a team drafts him as a middle linebacker, they could get a safe prospect. I don't see any threats, but I think he's a borderline starter at best. I mean, you're looking at 2 seasons, 3 consecutive seasons as a starter with over 100 tackles. So he's got a good resume.
Yeah, this is a guy, I like him. I think he could end up being a very good starter in the NFL here in a couple years. I don't quite think he's ready yet, but I think he's got good instincts, good run stuffer. Yeah, he can get into the backfield when asked to on the pass rush. He's a good athlete, but if you get somebody bigger than he is, that's where the problem starts. You get somebody 280, 290 pounds, he starts having a little bit of trouble. So, I mean, if he gets better at using his hands, I see a very productive starter in the NFL.
Well, Tony Mario mocked him to the Carolina Panthers in the 3rd round. I don't know how you feel about this fit, but Tony Mario mocked him in the 3rd round of the Carolina Panthers. He mocked him not as a middle linebacker, but as a weak side linebacker, and basically said, put this guy in Carolina. He can learn under Kuechly. He can learn under Thomas Davis. He can learn under Shaq Thompson for a year. And then once he learns under those guys and improves his hand movement and technique, you can put him in Carolina. And Carolina is a fit for us.
That's a pretty good fit because they've got a lot of veterans, and there's no guaranteeing those 3 veterans will be gone after 1 year, so he might have a couple years to.
Well, Thomas Davis said that 2018 will be his final season. Thomas Davis is going to retire at the end of next season, so he'd sit out as a rookie and then take over for Davis. But that's still a pretty good fit.
Yeah, that's a really good fit for him.
All right. Next up at number 9, I have a 4th round grade on this guy, but you're going to try to sell me on moving him up in my rankings. That's Ohio Bobcats linebacker Quentin Pauling. And great leadership, tackling machine, 2-time team captain. He was the team captain when they had Blair Brown. He's not as fast or as effective at wrapping up tackles as Blair Brown. He's going to miss a tackle from time to time. I have a 4th round grade on him. He played in the NFL PA Bowl yesterday. I really didn't see him stand out or do anything in the PA Bowl, which could hurt his stock, but I think he's going to be a very good backup. I think he's going to be a very good depth player in the NFL. And teams are always in different players with that leadership, with most of the things on tape. He might end up being a starter. I might be wrong about Pauling, but a lot of things.
Pauling is a guy that he has all the intangibles you want in a player. He's a good leader. He is fundamentally, he's going to get people in place. He knows the game well, and he's going to do everything right. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes, but he's not the athlete that you want. So where a lot of these guys are athletes but need to work harder on getting the game down, this guy knows the game and is a strong leader. He just doesn't have the athleticism as others, and that tackles because he has to get all of his angles correct. He has to get everything right in order to chase down a player. So, and if he is off, he's not going to drag somebody down. He isn't going to chase somebody down. So his big thing is he's not an athlete as far as what you would get from some of those other guys. So you're really going to have to work with him on his speed and athleticism. And I think right now he's a guy he'll be good on special teams, but you don't want to put him in the rotation. He doesn't have the athleticism to keep up.
Yeah, number 10 is a player Oren told me about, and that's Oren Burks out of Vanderbilt. And it's a pretty funny coincidence that Oren ended up telling me about him. But this guy had 82 tackles this year. He has a lot of the same flaws that Zach Cunningham did. It doesn't help that he's a worse prospect than Cunningham. He can be effective in coverage at times. That's really the only positive I saw with him on tape. This guy struggled immensely versus running backs. He didn't have the speed to keep up with running backs like Nick Chubb. He didn't have the speed to keep up with any of Alabama's running backs. He's basically a 2-down version of Zach Cunningham with all of Zach Cunningham's weaknesses. And remember, Zach Cunningham was a tackling machine. He had more tackles than Reuben Foster last year, but he did not have athleticism that stood out on tape. In fact, his athleticism was very shaky because Zach Cunningham kept missing tackles against Matthew Days out of North Carolina State and Vanderbilt's bowl game against North Carolina State. And that's something I pointed out and said, well, this guy's actually not as good as the media's hyping him up to be. So I moved him down on my board after that point. And most NFL teams ended up doing the same thing. So a team that wants this guy for depth, he's not playing. He didn't play in the NFL PA Bowl or the Shrine Game. That really hurts him. He might even fall past the 4th round. I think 4th round is his ceiling right now, but he could even fall to rounds 5 through 7. I have an 80 grade on him, but I think he could be a solid backup if you develop his athleticism.
Yeah, right now he's a special teamer. It's nothing special. Needs a lot of work. He has a chance to make a 53-man roster, but a couple of the last guys on there, other than special teams, I really don't see it right now. Yeah, same here. Matthew Thomas is a player that I saw. I know Matthew Thomas out of Florida State's a player we saw during the Shrine Game, and that size at 6'4", 219 is there. He's very versatile. He's a great run stuffer. He missed tackles and got beat in coverage easily. Those were my weaknesses. And I did write this scouting report on Thomas before the Shrine Game. So his coverage looked a lot better during the Shrine Game, but wrap up players without missing tackles because he's 6'4", 219 pounds. He has the body of a safety, and if he can get better in coverage, he could be a hybrid type player at linebacker or safety. I think he's got the tools to be an effective backup at linebacker, though.
What was your takeaway from him at the Shrine game this week, Matthew Thomas out of Florida State?
What was that?
Matthew Thomas is number 11 on our middle linebacker rankings. He was at the Shrine game this week. The Florida State linebacker who was at the Shrine game this week.
Yeah. He is like a lot of Florida State players. Great athlete, extremely well conditioned. But unfortunately for him, he is too undersized to be considered a middle linebacker or even an inside linebacker.
Yeah.
He's going to have a position change at 219 pounds. And last I heard, he was willing to do safety drills at the combine. So it's like, if he gets invited to the combine, he's going to do safety drills, you know, that's the big plus on his part.
Yeah, number 12 is Niles Morgan out of Notre Dame, 6'1", 235, had 92 tackles. He was voted team captain at the beginning of the year, but he did not finish the year as team captain because of some off-the-field things, an internal matter, as Brian Kelly called it. He lacks the speed to bring down running backs, struggles with wrapping up tackles and winning blocks. But he had great leadership, but he didn't maintain it. And him not playing in the NFLPA Bowl, the Shrine Game, or the Senior Bowl, that limits him to a late-round grade. Even if his tape is effective at times, I gave him a 79 grade and a 5th. So, any thoughts on Niles Morgan out of Notre Dame, Joey?
Not really. He never stood out or really impressed me a whole lot. He was a good role player for the team, but I mean that was about it.
Yeah, number 13, Darius Leonard, 6'3", 235. Limited to a middle linebacker role, but he had 114 tackles, 12 tackles for a loss, 8.5 sacks, and 2 interceptions. This guy's a tackling machine. He can get past the line of scrimmage, struggles in coverage. He misses too many easy tackles on tape, and he didn't play quality competition in the FCS. I'm curious to see what Darius Leonard does in Mobile because he had more tackles than Nick DeLuca. DeLuca is more fundamentally sound, and they're both Senior Bowl prospects. So I'm really curious to see which one of these FCS linebackers steps up to the plate because Darius Leonard could be the riser if DeLuca struggles in Mobile and Leonard capitalizes on his chance to impress NFL teams. So even though I have him at 13, he could move up to maybe number 7. So he's a player to keep an eye on in Mobile.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, Stanford guys are always fundamentally sound. Usually pretty good athletes.
This guy's on South Carolina State, but yeah.
South Carolina. Still same.
Yeah, Hargrave had a great Senior Bowl week, and he went in the 3rd round of the Steelers. So.
Yeah, I just saw the S. I didn't look at anything else. It's like.
Yeah, the South Carolina State logo looks like a direct ripoff of Stanford with the bulldog in the background. That's basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see the bulldog, but I know the name. South Carolina, thankfully, they run the same type of defense as Stanford, so I don't sound like too much of an idiot here. Afraid to admit it. Yeah, but I didn't see a whole lot of them. Hence the easy mix-up of the schools based on the S. But, yeah, they run the same type. They're always pretty good athletes, fundamentally sound defensively. So, but they're always underachieved. So, Combine and Senior Bowl, all those can be big days for him.
Yep, and the next linebacker is another Senior Bowl player, another Alabama player. Kerm gets to listen to 2 Alabama players on this show. Sean Dion Hamilton at 14. Now, this guy's undersized at 6', 235. He's an excellent communicator. His leadership is through the roof. I mean, he organized Bible studies where Alabama's linebackers, they would watch film of opponents after Bible study. It's like if Reuben Foster had this kind of leadership off the field, Myles Garrett would have taken him over Solomon Thomas.
Reuben Foster's not even smart enough to smoke pot in the state that it's legal to smoke pot in. He has to go to another state where it's illegal to smoke it. So, I mean, we're looking at a guy with a lot of skills in Foster, but not very many brain cells, unfortunately.
Yeah, but this is a guy who's got that veteran presence. He shows 3-down ability. The problem is he has a lot he needs to work on. He needs to win blocks. He needs to wrap up tackles. He will be a force once he fixes these areas of his game. He also needs to close with more speed like Foster and do a better job in coverage. It's like Nick Saban was literally asking himself, why can't I have a linebacker with Sean Dion Hamilton's common sense and Reuben Foster's athleticism? Why? That's probably what he's telling himself after he lost to Clemson last year. And then Rashaan Evans stepped up to the plate. So it all sort of worked out for him. But, yeah, there's durability concerns because 2 years in a row, Sean Dion Hamilton has dealt with healthy and ready to go for the Senior Bowl. But he's got a lot he needs to work on. Those 2 consecutive seasons with season-ending injuries really don't help his case. I like the guy. I admire his leadership, but it's like 2 consecutive years with season-ending injury. That's going to hurt his stock a little bit.
I care about the injuries. He's got great leadership, and he has nothing else. He might be able to make a special team, in camp, but, pretty much the rest of your guys down here.
Honestly, if I were Nick Saban, if he didn't get drafted, I'd bring him back as a coach. Because I think he could do that. I think he could coach. I think he's probably a better prospect as a coach than he is as a player.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because I think he's one of those players whose leadership is just at such a high level that you could bring him back as a coach and he'd have success.
Advantage, of course, if he wants to coach.
That's true.
And something else, say, if he doesn't make a special team, which I'm sort of iffy on him making it. And a big thing is the injuries that he's had throughout his career. These plays, he's been good, but again, it's the injuries. And he might just stick on the practice squad. If he doesn't,
that might be a possibility. Practice squad players get paid like $5,000 a week, so he wouldn't be hurting for money.
He'll just have to make sure to manage his money.
Yeah, if you manage your money, it's like it's 5 times more than I get paid a month, so he should be good.
Yeah, and number 15, wrapping up our list of linebacker prospects, Jack Sitchie out of Wisconsin, 6'2", 234. He has the same size as Rashaan Evans, he's more versatile, but he struggles with winning blocks. He misses tackles, and he did not play in 2014 or 2017. He missed the entire 2014 season and the entire 2017 season. So Sitchie's another one of these players that has those durability concerns out of Wisconsin. But you know how Wisconsin is. They churn out a lot of good linebackers. And Zach Sitchie, he had one game where he came in and he got like 3 sacks on Cody Kessler in a bowl game a few years ago. Like he was the guy, because I remember Cody Kessler's bowl game from like 2015, the year before he was draft eligible. And Zach Sitchie just came out like a stormtrooper and he got like 3 sacks on him in one drive. So there's some potential there, but at the same time, this is a player who really is going to be a project, and he's going to be a great depth player for you.
Yeah, once again, didn't see a lot other than a depth or practice squad player in it.
So, and I think the rest of these linebackers are backups, but backups who can play special teams, backups who can do a lot of different things and have their role. But this class, you know who the guys are and you know where the drop-off is. So I don't think this class is stronger than last year's class, but I do think it's more top-heavy. That's sort of the conclusion I came to with this linebacker group.
Yeah, it's like rounds 1 through 2 or 3 have good, solid players on them. Rounds 4 through 7, not nearly as strong.
Yeah.
It's just a complete drop-off.
Yeah, we had 20 middle linebackers in our rankings last year. We have 15 this year, so it's a weaker class as well. There's not as much depth in the later rounds, and you know who the guys are. If you study this group, you know who the guys are, and you know where they're going to go. So it's a pretty basic group. That being said, there's some talent at the top of the boards.
Yeah. There is some talent at the top of the board, not much talent at the bottom of it.
Yeah, and we're gonna end the Google Hangout, but we'll be back on TalkShoe. You can click through the Draft Utopia thing, and we'll talk about some underclassmen for 10 minutes, and then we'll get to our predictions at